Research Network
Project
International.
Hello, well here we are finally at the end of this 2-year-long SNEEZE project and here at the final workshop, and maybe good if we kind of reflect on what we learned over these past couple of years and thought about where this is going. So thinking about the project, what are some of the main takeaways that we found out of these works that say maybe either from the interviews that we did with stakeholders or maybe from some of the surveys that we did with citizens?
Yeah, maybe first to contextualize a bit. So we had a project that really focuses on cities with high levels of urban air pollution and identify some of the main barriers maybe that really make it hard to move towards cleaner air. And we had these two data collection components, as you mentioned, the first being stakeholder interviews with people working locally on the ground. The second one, a more citizens-focused component where we conducted surveys with people on the ground. From the expert interviews, it really emerged that there are some of these consistent barriers in resource-constrained contexts where both governments and citizens just might have different issues higher up their priority list than addressing air pollution. On the other hand, air pollution comes from so many different sources that sometimes it's really hard to bring together the key stakeholders and also to have a more integrated approach that goes kind of beyond the different levels of government on the one hand and also sectors within a city. In our surveys, we interestingly found actually that citizens are much more aware than we would have maybe expected. So really high levels of concern about air pollution across the 4 cities we conducted interviews, which is Accra in Ghana, then Johannesburg in South Africa, Delhi in India, and Jakarta in Indonesia. And on the one hand, really high levels of concern and also salience, ranking air pollution high in terms of also different problems they might face in their daily lives. And also when it comes to supporting different measures, because this was also like a major goal of the project to identify what are some of the potentially effective but also politically feasible solutions. So solutions that might find public backing in the different locales, because that's a constraint that policymakers face, right? Especially in resource scarce contexts, to identify the measures they can actually put forward. And even here, we found that support is across the board very high for different measures that aim at reducing air pollution, from lower cost measures such as providing information on public health by kind of raising awareness, so more awareness raising campaigns, but also when it comes to fines or even banning of old vehicles, and even for policies that entail direct citizen costs, like increased electrification, raising prices in electricity, or regulating industries, which might come with a cost of like the products. We saw people are actually quite supportive.
And when you say this is more of a kind of the surprising finding as an output of this, or how would you view these findings?
I think it actually is, because especially like in the contrast of what we learned from the stakeholder interviews, where we, I think, grasp rather that air pollution is relatively low on the priority list, both for governments, but also from a citizen perspective. What we've learned from the surveys is really contradicting this idea of lower levels of concern in context of lower levels of economic development. Also much like expected from literature we have in the domain of political science. We would maybe rather expect lower levels of awareness and also demand for these types of policies, but this is actually not what the story tells from our citizen surveys.
Yeah, I'd fully agree. That was caught me a little bit off guard too. I mean, in some ways it's a normatively positive finding that people want something to happen, but it's also in many ways kind of speaks to a different mismatch between what our expert stakeholders said as well. So what do we do next, Ella? Where are we going to go from here?
I mean, on the one hand, of course, we still have like a lot of material to dig into deeper. We collected a lot of data, so just really working with that. And then I think something we really take away from this project is also our interactions with the local stakeholders. So building some more capacities and collaborations with people working on the ground on these issues, identifying maybe where potential future collaborations could be, if that's in the realm of maybe monitoring air pollution, or also just some disseminating more of the knowledge we maybe gained from our interviews, and especially the cross-context comparisons, and finding the entry points to making kind of also an impact on the ground by sharing it with the right people, I think are important next steps to tackle.
Nice. And if there's one thing you would want someone to take away from this project, what would that be?
I think for me it's really that air pollution is something that people see and experience and also want their governments to tackle, which is really running counter to many of the narratives of how people in lower income contexts think about air pollution.
Nice. Well, it's been a pleasure working on this project with you, Ella. Thank you.